After losing my job at the biggest food processing company in town, I made a decision that would change the rest of my life. I was going to go into business for myself. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined that my small gamble would turn into one of the most powerful food companies the world has ever seen, a brand pulling in billions of dollars every year. But that's exactly what happened, and this is the story of how Lay's chips came to be. It all started back in 1909, when I was born Herman Lay in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in a quiet, middle-class family. My father kept the books for a living, and my mother stayed at home to raise us. There was never a clear path laid out for me, no obvious career waiting down the road. But I discovered early on that I had a knack for selling. As a kid, I set up a little soda stand for the locals, and business got so good that I even hired a few helpers. That small taste of entrepreneurship planted a seed in me that would carry through my whole life. Still, I was restless. College didn't excite me the way business did. Even though I had earned a full athletic scholarship, I decided to drop out. I wanted to get out into the real world and start building something. That choice led me to Sunshine Biscuits, a company known for cookies, crackers, and cereals. It felt like the perfect first step into the food business. But then the Great Depression hit in 1929, and it hit hard. Across the country, nearly a quarter of the workforce lost their jobs, and those lucky enough to keep working saw their incomes cut in half. I was only 20 years old at the time, and just like millions of others, I suddenly found myself unemployed. That experience left a mark. It taught me that I couldn't rely on just one paycheck. I had to find ways to diversify my income and create something that gave me real independence. So when I landed a new job at the Bartlett Food Company, I didn't just show up for the paycheck. That's when I started a little side hustle, one that would grow far bigger than I ever dreamed, and eventually transform the American food market forever. By then, I had moved to Nashville, Tennessee, right in the heart of the South, and that's where the story truly begins. It was in Nashville where I started experimenting with something that turned out to be far more popular than I expected. I made it my signature move to show up with bags of potato chips whenever I visited customers as a traveling salesman. Before long, people knew me as the guy who always had chips packed in the back of his Ford Model A. I was fortunate, too, because the timing lined up with a breakthrough in the snack market. Potato chips had been around since the 1850s, when someone realized that slicing potatoes thin and baking them created an entirely different experience compared to the chunky cuts or French fries most folks were used to. Those early chips, called Saratoga chips after the New York town where they were created, caught on locally, but never really took the country by storm. That changed in 1926, when someone figured out how to seal chips in wax paper bags to keep them fresh. Suddenly, they became a snack you could carry anywhere. I saw the potential right away. The Barrett Food Company, where I worked at the time, gave me the chance to sell these large, restaurant-quality chips that could stay fresh for days. And once I saw how quickly people were buying them, I knew I had to take a risk on myself. By then I had more than a decade of food industry experience under my belt, and I borrowed money from the bank to buy a dealership from my old employer. I called it the H.W. Lay Distribution Company. Just a few years later, I pulled together $40,000 through a stock sale and bought the entire Barrett Food Company outright. Not everyone believed in me. One of my biggest investors, a shopkeeper across the street from the factory, was crushed when he realized I was taking over. He had poured his family's savings into my company, and to him, the gamble looked far too dangerous. But I couldn't let fear stop me. My vision was bigger. I wanted to make potato chips that anyone in America could afford, a brand that could grow far beyond its small beginnings. The very first Lay's chips hit the shelves at just 10 cents a bag. It didn't take long before the brand exploded in popularity, and we had no choice but to scale up to meet the demand. Of course, plenty of competitors were trying to grab the same market, so I knew Lay's had to stand out. That's when I leaned on marketing in ways no one else in the snack world had tried. In 1944, Lay's became the very first snack food company to advertise on television. Not long after, we hired Burt Lahr, the actor who had played the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, to be the face of our chips. One campaign, with the catchy line, "Bet you can't eat just one," became a cultural moment and helped cement Lay's as America's go-to potato chip. But it wasn't just clever ads that gave us an edge. We pushed our product itself forward. We were the first to launch crinkle-cut chips, what people call ruffled chips today, which held up better in the bag and didn't break as easily. By 1950, Lay's was leading the potato chip market. And that same year, we made a move that would give us an advantage for decades to come. We had been quietly negotiating for the rights to a patented cooking process created by an Irishman named Joe Spud Murphy, who ran a company called Tato. Murphy had figured out how to add seasoning during the cooking process, locking in flavor while still mass-producing chips. It was a game changer. The first flavors we released were cheese and onion, along with salt and vinegar, both of which went on to become some of the most popular chips in Lay's entire history. Once we secured the rights to flavored potato chips, we wasted no time creating flavors of our own. That single innovation catapulted Lay's into an entirely new league, leaving most of our competitors scrambling to catch up. By the early 1960s, I was still running the H.W. Lay Company, and by then we were pulling in $45 million a year. To put that into today's terms, that's nearly $500 million in annual sales. But even with all that success, there was one major rival standing in the way of complete market dominance: the Frito Company. Frito had built its empire on corn chips, and at that point, they were outselling Lay's by nearly 30%. Their story was remarkably similar to mine. Back in San Antonio, the founder, C.E. Doolan, bought the recipe for corn chips from a small cafe. He started baking them right in his mother's kitchen. And just like me, he didn't have a store, so he sold them straight out of his car, a Ford just like mine. Before long, his corn chips caught fire, and Frito grew into a regional powerhouse. Although Doolan and I were operating 900 miles apart, it was inevitable that our paths would cross. And when that moment came, I had a choice: fight a drawn-out battle for market share or join forces. Instead of competing, I pulled together a deal that merged the two companies. That's how Frito-Lay was born, the very first true national snack brand in America. And in what I still consider one of my proudest business moves, I managed to remain CEO of the newly formed company. After the merger in 1961, we wasted no time rolling out new products. Some of the most iconic snack brands in history came out of that era: Doritos, Funyuns, Munchos, and even Pringles. But as big as that was, it was only the beginning. The merger set the stage for another move, one that would create one of the largest food companies the world has ever seen. In 1965, I sat down with a businessman named Don Kindle to discuss another merger. This time, it wasn't another snack company. It was a beverage giant. I believed that if we could bring food and drinks together under one roof, we wouldn't just strengthen our grip on the American market, we'd also be able to expand aggressively overseas. I literally sketched out the proposal on the back of a napkin, and Kindle agreed. At the time, Kindle was the CEO of Pepsi Cola, a brand that had been around since 1868. Pepsi had already built a portfolio of drinks, from Mountain Dew to Diet Pepsi and 7-Up. Their main competition, of course, was Coca-Cola, and Pepsi was hungry for an edge. The merger gave them just that. Frito-Lay continued to operate as a subsidiary of Pepsi, but now with the resources of a global beverage powerhouse behind us. That extra muscle allowed us to scale faster, reach new markets, and turn what had once been a regional snack into the international giant we all know today.